Welcome back to another FPL video. This will be the best wildcard team for Blank Gameweek 26. It's quite an awkward time to use the chip because you've got this Blank Gameweek, you've got a double in 28 and another blank in 29, and then there's a big fixture swing from 30 until the end of the season. But this wildcard team will help you tick most of the boxes and also help you plan accordingly. I'll show you some transfers you can do in the future to optimize this squad so you can have a really good team in every single game week coming up. If you're not enjoying this video, smash the like button and subscribe for new. If this video gets to over 200 likes, there's going to be a chip strategy guide uploaded later this week. And of course, the team selection, where I've only got one free transfer, but I'm prepared to take a -4 hit to navigate Blank Gameweek 26 and Blank Gameweek 29. Without further ado, let's jump straight into this video. Neto is the joint 7th highest scoring goalkeeper in FPL with 79 points. Nothing spectacular, but he has a double in Gameweek 28, and I think he's a pretty decent option over the next couple of weeks. And Bournemouth have good fixtures until Gameweek 32. The big downside is that Bournemouth aren't good defensively, but Neto is decent with penalty saves, and he can make a lot of saves in general and get the occasional bonus points, and that's why he's in this team. I'll show you later on as well what the lineup would be for Gameweek 26, but Neto surely wouldn't be in the starting 11 against Manchester City at home. I can assure you of that. But in double Gameweek 28, he's a very good way of covering that Bournemouth defence. And the second goalkeeper is someone who's featured in most of these videos, and his team has been really off form, but I still back him. He's been one of the best goalkeepers in the Premier League this season, and that's Areola. He offers tremendous value, and you could also look at Dubravka, who's got good fixtures until Gameweek 32, but I don't trust Newcastle defensively at all, and I think West Ham will bounce back eventually. It's just a matter of when, and Areola's a decent option to start this week and in Blank Gameweek 29. So I've gone for these two goalkeepers. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. The other options I like include Alisson, who blanks this week and he's injured potentially up until April. That's what the latest reports indicate. David Raya will be ineligible to play against Brentford in Gameweek 28, his parent club, and in Gameweek 29, Arsenal very likely to blank. Then you look at Kaminsky. Luton Town also quite poor defensively, but you could go for him instead of Neto. And ultimately, the other goalkeepers, you're probably looking at Onana, who's actually a decent choice right now, Pickford and Emi Martinez. But I've gone for these two, and of course, if you disagree, I can completely understand that. But let's now move on to the defenders. Arsenal defenders are featured in most of these wildcard videos, and with good reason. They have the best defence in the league, and I've been saying this even when they had that quite poor run. The underlying numbers always suggested that they should keep the most clean sheets. They concede the fewest chances and XG, and it's now starting to catch up a little bit. But Arsenal always have one of these winless streaks in them. 2 or 3 per season under Arteta, who's doing a great job of Arsenal, but Arsenal aren't the most reliable of teams in the long term, so let's see if they can continue this fine form. But ever since they went off to Dubai in the winter break, that's 5 games, 5 wins, 21 goals scored, and only 2 conceded. They face Porto tonight, and that's going to be a massive game. If they can get through this week, beating Porto and Newcastle, they're in a great position, and 9 days rest until their next Premier League game, and things will be looking really strong for the Gunners. But Gabriel, for me, is the best way to cover that Arsenal defence. I still like Saliba, but I think Gabriel offers slightly better value for money. Next up is going to be a defender who hasn't featured very often in these videos, but I think he's definitely worth mentioning, and his team is one of the most in form in the Premier League right now, and that's Diogo Dalot, who I talked about in the best free hit team video. I think he's very good for bonus points. He can get the occasional attack in return, and whilst he costs almost 1 million more than Harry Maguire, in fact it is 1 million more, I think it is worth going for Dalot. Maguire isn't as nailed on as the Portuguese international, and with Dalot, I think he's quite an underrated option in FPL, and he's a good choice up until Gameweek 29, where United are very likely to blank, but you never know. If they do lose to Forest in the FA Cup, they will feature in that blank game week against Sheffield United at home, and that's where the likes of Dalot could be even better FPL options in the long term. So I have gone for the Portuguese right back. I think he's a good choice. He can also play on the left hand side. And speaking of which, I'm going to go for a left back who's been on several loan spells this year, and that's going to be Reguilon, who helps you cover Blank Gameweek 26 and Blank Gameweek 29. He just had a double in 25 and did fairly okay, picking up that assist against Liverpool. So I would go for the Spaniard, and I think in terms of covering that Brentford defence, it's either Flecken in goal or Reguilon as your defender. If you choose to go for Flecken in goal over Neto, that's completely fine. Then you could consider another option instead of Reguilon. I don't advocate that defensive double up, but I do like Reguilon because he's on set pieces. He's got a bit of attacking potential from open play, and he also can get some bonus points every now and again. But there's 2 defender spots left, and I'm not a huge fan of these defenders, to be quite honest with you. If you looked at my previous wildcard videos, you would have seen a very different look in the defensive line. But things have changed. You have to look at the blank game weeks, of course. And if you are wildcarding now, you'd ideally not use the free hit anytime soon and perhaps save that for game week 34 or 37. And some of you watching might not even have the free hit available right now. So there's 2 defender spots left. I'm going to go for a solid choice who should be nailed on for the long term, and that's Pau Torres. You can go for Alex Moreno, who's a bit more exciting. He's got more attacking potential as well. But with Luca Dean coming back and Europa Conference League also knocking around the corner, I think there could be rotation there for Aston Villa. But one player who should start every single game is Pau Torres, and that is perfect for covering both blank game weeks. So I've gone for the Spaniard, and Aston Villa are decent defensively in terms of the underlying numbers, but that injury to Kamara is a massive blow. And as a result, I don't expect many clean sheets for Aston Villa, but even just one clean sheet in either blank game week 26 or 29 would be enough, and I think that gets you the job done, and you can rotate this defensive line in most game weeks. The final defender doesn't feature in blank game week 26, but he's got a chance of featuring in blank game week 29, and it once again depends on the Manchester United versus Nottingham Forest result in the FA Cup 5th round, and depending on that, you will see if this player features, and that's going to be Alfie Doughty, who's been a bit underwhelming recently. That match between Liverpool and Luton Town hasn't taken place, so let's see if he can do anything there. But he's got a lot of attacking potential from open play, and he's a very exciting defender to own, considering he's a cheap defender and he plays for Luton Town. But I do like Doughty for double game week 28. He's got a decent double there, both away fixtures against Crystal Palace and Bournemouth, but still quite decent, and I would expect him to return there. He could well be my transfer in for double game week 28, especially if Luton Town feature in blank game week 29. So it's quite a different defense as what you would have seen previously in my videos, but I do think it covers both blank game weeks very well, and you could consider, if you were to go for any defensive double up, I think Arsenal is still worth investing in, and Gabriel and Saliba should get the job done. But let's now move on to the midfielders, and things will look even more interesting here with some different picks that I haven't talked about before in the previous wildcard videos. Even when Saka was in poor form, I kept talking about holding him in the Trans Tips videos and also including him in the best wildcard team videos, which some people disagreed with, but over time he's done really well, scoring penalties, even from open play. He's looking a lot sharper and more incisive, getting into great positions, and Arsenal in general are being a lot quicker in their attacks and punishing teams, which they weren't doing in December, where they generally played well, but they just tried to walk the ball into the back of the net, and as a result, they overfought. They also overplayed some of these opportunities and fumbled a lot of openings in the process. But Saka has been tremendous, the best FPL asset in the last couple of game weeks. I believe that's 49 points in the last 4. That is incredible, and of course he was robbed of that assist against Crystal Palace, but that happened long ago, and it's only a couple of points anyway. But Saka's been so consistent, and despite that one poor run he's had in December, generally speaking, he doesn't blank very often, and I do think Saka in the long run is still a great choice. He's very likely to blank in 29, then it's Man City in game week 30, but after that the fixtures ease up, and I still think Saka is arguably a season keeper, and the ideal midfield would include Salah, Saka and Heung-min Son. But how do you fit those three and Erling Haaland up front? That's going to be the big debate later on in the season. But the second midfielder I'm going to go for is someone I talked about in the transfer tips. He could well be my transfer in for this week, and that's going to be Hwang Hee-chan. I also like Pedro Neto, and Sarabia could be a decent differential, and it's worth noting actually that Sarabia could be the main penalty taker. He has scored 17 out of 17 penalties throughout his career. I think Hwang Hee-chan has missed 2, but he's got a good record from the spot, and he did take 1 this season, but Sarabia was on the bench. But even then, Cunha's out injured, and Hwang Hee-chan is going to play down the middle, and he's got decent underlying numbers. He's by far the biggest goal threat that Wolves have to offer. 10 goals for him, 3 FPL assists. With Pedro Neto though, he's the main creator with 11 assists in FPL, but only 2 goals. So it's just up to you what you want to go for. I really like Pedro Neto as a player, but in FPL, I would favour Hwang Hee-chan ever so slightly. If you disagree, of course, be sure to let me know as always. But the third midfielder is another contender for my transfer in this week, and he helps you navigate blank game week 29, and that's going to be Douglas Luiz, who will face West Ham away in game week 29, which looks like a great fixture right now. And this week it's Nottingham Forest at home, and it's worth mentioning that Douglas Luiz has a great record at Villa Park. He's on penalties and he's a bonus points machine, so there's a lot to like with Douglas Luiz. He's a really good option to cover both blank game weeks if you're looking to navigate this period without using a free hit. Douglas Luiz is a great transfer in, and on the wild card I would thoroughly recommend him. In terms of other Aston Villa midfielders, the key candidate candidate would be Bailey, who I talked about in the transfer tips. He's a bit more exciting, plays more advanced, of course, but he's also more prone to rotation and injuries compared to Douglas Luiz, who will start every single game. The same goes for Pau Torres, so I'm playing a bit safe with some of these picks, but I do think it makes sense. Also bearing in mind Blank Gameweek 29, and you've got points potential as soon as Gameweek 26 as well. So there's 2 midfielder slots left. I'm going to go for one of the best midfielders in recent weeks, despite a couple of blanks, of course, in Double Gameweek 25, which was quite surprising. But Phil Foden has been in incredible form in the Champions League and Premier League in general, and he's getting a lot more goals and assists than he has been doing in maybe, let's say, last season and the last couple of campaigns. So Foden, for me, is the best way to cover the Man City midfield. The fixtures don't look particularly great because after Bournemouth, it's Man United at home, then it's Liverpool away, and a very likely blank in 29, then it's Arsenal in Gameweek 30, but Foden has a great record against Manchester United, so I'd like to keep him for that game week. You could potentially sell ahead of that Liverpool game. You could go to Ross Barkley or another player who doubles in Gameweek 28, but I'd definitely recommend Foden for Gameweek 26 and 27. The only issue is possible rotation because he has started a lot of Premier League games recently. But the final midfielder does blank this week. He does feature in Blank Gameweek 29, and for me, between Gameweek 27 and 30, he's arguably the best option in FPL in that time frame, and he's also a very exciting player to own, and I'm talking about none other than Heung-min Son, who is right up there with Saka and Salah as the best midfielders and players in FPL in terms of points scored this season. And like I say, between Gameweek 27 and 30, you have him ready and primed from the beginning. You bench him this week, and I think he's a great transfer in. I'm looking at him at either Gameweek 27 or 28. I'm even prepared to take a -4 hit to get Heung-min Son in because he's a great captaincy contender against Fulham away in Gameweek 29. He's also got a good record against Aston Villa, who he faces in Gameweek 28, and Crystal Palace at home in Gameweek 27 looks very encouraging to say the least. Luton Town at home in Gameweek 30 is also a good fixture. So this midfield 5 is diverse. It's quite different to what I've talked about in previous Wildcard Team videos. It helps you cover the blanks, of course. That's a very important thing with this Wildcard squad. Gameweek 30 and beyond is always going to be an issue, whether you wildcard now or you're taking hits or making normal transfers, but that's why it's all about finding the right solution for your squad. It's a team-dependent thing, whether you should play the free hit or the wildcard in a certain week. I'm personally not using the wildcard this week. I'm looking to save it to Gameweek 30 or 31. But let's move on to the free forwards. And once again, there's some key absentees, but the free forwards that are here are of really high quality, and they're going to do a great job for the next couple of weeks. I can't remember the last time I made a best wildcard team video and didn't include Ollie Watkins. His consistency is tremendous. He doesn't have any doubles, but he doesn't need them. And I think a lot of people have been unfortunate with their transfers, with all the injuries that have been happening to Jota, Darwin Nunez, Adebayo. There are countless to talk about. Ethan Pinnock. We could go on for days talking about Double Gameweek 25 and disasters that have happened. But Watkins only had one game and still delivered a brace. And he's such a consistent option with the potential of goals and assists. He doesn't even have penalties, otherwise he could be game-breaking value really, and to be honest he already is, despite going up in price so many times this season. He's got a plum fixture this week. He's a captaincy contender against Nottingham Forest at home, West Ham away in Gameweek 29, and he's still good in the weeks just beforehand where Tottenham at home doesn't look great, but the way Tottenham are defending, I think Watkins has a great chance of scoring. And for me, apart from Erling Haaland, I think Watkins is firmly the best forward in FPL. And you could argue that he's been better than Erling Haaland this season. But speaking of which, I'm still going to go for the Norwegian robot, but it has to be mentioned that in Gameweek 28, I would sell him to Solanke, and yes, you heard it right, I'm not going for Solanke in this wildcard team. He faces Man City at home this week, but then between Gameweek 27 and 32, it's a sea of green in the fixture difficulty rating for Bournemouth, and Solanke should go into your team in either Gameweek 27 or Gameweek 28, but just bear in mind that Bournemouth are quite likely to blank in 29. But that's why the final forward, he hasn't played much this season, but ever since his hefty suspension, he has delivered time and time again, and that's Ivan Toney. I've talked about him so much this week, and he could well be another transfer in for me in this week. I got Darwin Nunez for Solanke last week for a -4 hit. It hasn't paid off, but one thing that could maybe ease the pain is if by buying Toney this week, I can get in on the action, and Toney has a great record against West Ham. 2 goals and 2 assists in 3 games against the Hammers, and Brentford are a bogey team for West Ham, who are really struggling in this calendar year with 0 wins up until this point. But Tony, for me, is a great differential still. His ownership is just under 10%. And I think if you are wildcarding now, this is the front three I'd go for. Then I would move Erling Haaland on to Solanke in Game Week 28, and you could still field 10 or 11 players in Blank Gameweek 29. But let's now move on to FPL Team to discuss the starting 11, the captaincy, and then look ahead quite briefly to Game Week 27, 28, and Blank Gameweek 29. Between the sticks, I would go for Areola over Neto. I think that's quite self-explanatory. Based on the fixtures, Areola has a better chance of a clean sheet. There is a clash between him and Ivan Toney, but I still think it makes sense, and you can still get one return from one of those players at the very least. Gabriel, Dalot, and Pau Torres completes the back three, a midfield four of Saka, Foden, Hwang Hee-chan, and Douglas Luiz, and the front three is as good as you can get this week with Haaland, Watkins, and Toney. We've only got two bench players who are featuring this week in Neto and Reguilon. Then you've got Son and Doughty who blank, but they do have the fixtures in Blank Gameweek 29 potentially, or in Doughty's case, a double in Gameweek 28 to compensate. And that's 60.4 expected points according to FPL.team. And I've personally got 1.6 million left in the bank with this wildcard squad. But if we look then to Game Week 27 and some transfers you can start to make, well, you don't even need to make one technically. You can roll, and yes, it's not ideal to have Reguilon at home to Chelsea, but the rest of the defensive line looks decent. You've got Neto away to Burnley, Gabriel away to Sheffield United, and Pau Torres away to Luton Town. But more importantly, the midfield and forward line look really solid. And in terms of the captaincy, I would favour Haaland in Game Week 27. But it has to be said, in Game Week 26, if we go back to it, I would also consider Watkins. Saka's a really good option against Newcastle, and potentially Hwang Hee-chan as a mega differential. But looking ahead to Game Week 28, the double game week that we have between Luton Town and Bournemouth, you could then bring in Barkley for Phil Foden, as I mentioned earlier in this video, and you can also buy Solanke for Erling Haaland for free, and then you've got 4 doublers, 2 from Bournemouth and 2 from Luton Town, and you can captain Solanke. I think he's by far the best option this week with 2 home games against Sheffield United and Luton Town, and the bench is also quite decent, but the fixtures are quite poor for some of them, especially Douglas Luiz and Pau Torres on paper, and then Reguilon away to Arsenal, and that's 78.2 expected points in double Game Week 28. Then in Blank Gameweek 29, you can take a -4 hit and get to 10 players very easily, and it's not always about quantity but also about the quality. And I think if you can get to 8 or more players in Blank Gameweek 29, I think that's more than enough, especially if there are only 4 or 5 confirmed fixtures, and that's very likely to be the case. And of course, if we do get a surprise like Leeds United being Chelsea in the FA Cup 5th round, you could easily get to an 11 and you don't even need to take a hit. There can be some surprises and upsets in the FA Cup, and as a result, it could be even easier to navigate Blank Gameweek 29 than it currently looks right now on paper. And breaking it down, the only transfer you'd actually need to make, because there is a little glitch here, so Dalot is the one you have instead of Ake. So this would be just for one free transfer, you get to 10 players. You buy Richarlison and you've got 10 players. You could even take a -4 hit and sell Solanke or buy another midfielder of your choice. I think one player that could go under the radar in Blank Gameweek 29 is Brian Mbeumo, who could be back by that stage around March. So that's another one to keep an eye on, away to Burnley. But as a result, with this wildcard squad, to get a full 11 in Blank Gameweek 29, you just need to take a -4 hit. Even 10 players is more than enough, in my opinion. As long as you have Heung-min Son, Toney, Watkins, and a few other options like that, I think you're more than covered, and you've got a respectable number, at least 6 or 7, I would say, ideally 8+, but you don't need to get a full 11 in Blank Gameweek 29, in my opinion. And you've also, of course, got plenty of options to choose from in Blank Gameweek 26. You've got 4 doublers in double Gameweek 28, and in Gameweek 30 and beyond, you've got a solid base for the rest of the season. So be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's try to get this video to over 200 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards 23k subscribers and beyond. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the links in the description below for the Patreon, Championships Discord server, the FPL League, and Draft Hound. All of that is there. I wish you all the best of luck for Blank Gameweek 26 and the rest of the season, and I'll see you next time.